Hey everybody, Tommy Hilcken here with my pal Dean Hoffman. And Dean, we've been hanging out a little bit, quite a bit now, and got to know each other. But let's take a little bit of a deeper dive. Let the people know what you're all about. You know, earlier we had talked about what I was about, what we got tired of that. So now we're going to move on to you. So let's talk a little bit about Dean Hoffman, my friend. So let's start right from the beginning. Hey Dean, where'd you grow up?
I don't think I have fully yet, but where I did grow up is in the Bronx, part of the five boroughs of New York City. Born and bred. I had an only child with two 40-year older than me parents. Grew up in the housing project, so we had 30 families in the building, and we used to love it when I would walk up the stairs to the sixth floor of a six-story building and smell all the different smells at dinner time of all the different ethnic cooking that was going on. And like I like to say, when you messed up, you didn't have one mom smacking you in the head. You had 30 moms smacking you in the head. So we were very close community within not just the area, but in my building.
The days of when you could smack a kid in the head, Dean.
I hear you can't do that anymore. Is that
Now
true?
we're not getting handcuffed.
Darn it.
So, you know, you just talked about getting smacked in the head. I don't know if that was one of your fondest memories, but what was one of your fondest memories of growing up in the Bronx? Tell us a little bit about it.
Fondest memories, probably getting the doorbell rung on a rainy day and having the neighborhood kids say, hey, we want to bring some baseball cards. We're going to play Wallsies and invent all these games that only the people in the inner city would understand, right? We played games. We had baseball pools. We had basketball pools. We played Wallsies with baseball cards. We made up stuff, flipping coins. It was a wonderful thing. And then when we went outside, when the weather was nicer, we played all the games that you have heard about, but we actually lived it. And Tommy, growing up where you grew up, you understand Skelly, stickball, baseball, basketball, football, any kind of ball, any kind of game that you could play with a Spalding.
Yeah.
Off the bench, off the stoop, off the barrel, off the kid that was a pain in the neck's head. Whatever we did, it was with a ball. And we never came in the house and get on a gadget. We stayed outside until we got called in. And that was probably my favorite memory of growing up in the Bronx.
Yeah, you know, I just for old memories, I still have a Spalding in my drawer. I always will. And, you know, you didn't mention our favorite sport of all sports growing up and still probably to this day, wiffle ball, man.
Wiffle ball.
Wiffle ball.
Yep.
The best. So that's some of the good memories. It sounds great, you know, having the people around you, the fun. So what about a worst memory or something that just didn't click for you? It doesn't have to be a worst memory.
Well, I'll tell you, it started as a worst memory or bad memory growing up. You know, being one of the few Jewish kids in an Italian-Irish neighborhood, I suffered the consequences of that situation where I would get, kids would beat me up and threaten me and things like that. And those kids later on became my closest friends. And to this day, we stay in touch with each other. What I learned about myself, turning a worst memory into a positive memory, is I learned to defend myself. I learned to not being a pushover. I learned to get a spine and learn how to defend myself and to be respectful for others. So, you know, if we ended up beating each other up, we would be friends the next day and play ball together or do whatever we did together as friends. So.
And, you know, we both grew up in the city, so there was a lesson in everything that ever happened to us.
Absolutely.
Right? How to behave, not how to behave. And you know what? We learned it from our friends and people in the neighborhood. So we know, you and I, we love sports. We just went to a Mets game not too long ago. Dragged me, a Yankee fan, over to Citi Field. Love baseball, so it didn't matter. So let's talk about your favorite sport.
Well, there's baseball and there's other sports. My dad was a very big baseball fan, and my mom was too. Dad was a Yankee fan up until they traded his favorite player away, Joe Gordon, in 1946 to Cleveland, so he became an Indian fan. After Gordon retired in 1950, he became a nothing fan and he didn't follow any team. He just liked baseball. And then the Mets came to fruition in 1962. He became a Met fan, and I became a Met fan when I was taken to my first game 3 years later, and have been a Met fan, suffering Met fan, for 60 years now this year. But yes, there's baseball. I was always the Ets, the Mets, the Jets, and the Nets, both the NBA and the ABA Nets.
And you forgot the regrets.
I've had many.
Yeah. So your favorite team, the Mets, is that what you're saying?
Favorite
is that
team.
What you're telling me I have to sit here and listen to that?
I'm not going to elaborate, but Mets are my favorite team. Yeah. Good, bad, mostly bad. They are my favorite team. You know, once you're a Met fan, you don't go back.
You know, and when we grew up, right, we didn't have access to every game like they have today. There was nothing better than Vince Scully, Joe Garagiola, and the game of the week, Dean.
Yep.
That's for a whole nother conversation. But, man, remember, you can get to see the Cincinnati Reds play the Dodgers, things that now you can watch it anytime you want. But that was a great time where you'd rush home to make sure you saw those games.
Absolutely.
Right. So when you left the Bronx, when you moved out of the Bronx, where'd you go?
I moved out as a 22-year-old kid. I met and fell in love with this girl who happened to be a graduate student at Michigan State University in East Lansing. And I said, you know what? Rather than pay $300, $400 phone bills every month, which is what you did back then, I'm going to load up my car and I'm going to move out there. Of course, I asked permission and she said, yes, please. But I had a 1970 Chrysler Newport with a 383 engine. It was a boat. We've got about 3 miles a gallon, if that much, on a good day, and loaded up my worldly possessions. Wasn't much back then, but I loaded up, pointed the car west, and didn't stop till I got to East Lansing, Michigan. And that's where I was for 3 years.
Michigan, that's amazing, man. And you think about it, we all had that car that got 3 gas stations to the mile. Remember those?
Very well.
It was like, hey, look at my car. Can't afford to drive it around the block, but it's a great car.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, my brother's LTD was amazing. Wow.
Yeah.
All right, so I don't know if I should ask. What brought you back to New York? What happened in Michigan that we all want to know?
Or should we say what didn't happen in Michigan? Actually, it was before then, but in 1981, when I said, where are we going with this relationship? And the relationship, which I thought was going to go to the next level eventually, I was told that, well, I was hoping to marry a doctor, so you're not one. And I said, and I'm not going to be one, so I guess I'm heading back to New York. I came back to New York with about a nickel left in my pocket.
Wow.
Moved in with my parents temporarily because I couldn't afford to live anywhere else at the time. And that's what happened.
So in case this girl is watching, Dr. Hoffman, I would like... So let's talk about your career. All right, you didn't go to Dr. Root, but no Dr. J either, I could tell by your height. But when you think about it, what got you into this business that you do and that I know you love because you've done it for quite some time now? Let's talk a little bit about how you started doing the recruiting.
Well, I appreciate that. 1981, when I came back in June, I said, all right, it's time to start making a living here. My parents were getting older, being an only child. My dad had to retire early due to some health issues, so somebody had to make a contribution into the house, so I decided to make some real money. So I answered an ad, and you remember this, the New York Times Health Wanted section that spread across the room, and that was huge. And I remember just going through the Help Wanted section with a marker, and I would put down, nope, maybe, nope, oh yeah, maybe, and just keep going down until I had jobs that I know that I could do or I'd be interested in doing. And one stuck out. It was called a human resources trainee. And I go, human resources. I have a good personality. I can talk to people. Let me apply to that. So you ready for this? I mailed a resume with a stamp and an envelope, licked the envelope, sent the resume to this organization in New York, and hark, a week later, I got called in for an interview. I go, this is great. I'm going to get a human resources position.
Wow.
So I go in there, and I walk up, it was a 42nd and 5th in New York City, and across from the library, and I go up to the 5th floor, and I open the door, and there's about 100 people filling out applications. I go, oh my God, this is my competition. And I was waiting there for, it seemed like forever. And all of a sudden, this guy comes out, and he goes, Dean Hoffman here. And I go, right here. And he said, let me ask you some questions. Sure. Right in the room with all these people. And he asked me a few questions. I don't remember any of them except the last one. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I thought about it. I'd never been asked that before. And I thought about it and I said, well, to make a lot of money for myself and the company I'm working for. He goes, hold on. Comes back and he goes, all right, follow me. Brings me into this wide open room with about 50 or 60 people on phones. Everybody was smoking. You couldn't even see out the window.
Yeah,
it was so grimy.
Yep.
But he said, okay, here's a phone. Here's a pad and paper. Here's a script. And I want you to document all your calls. Ready, go. What am I doing? I had no idea. But I guess I have to call people from this script and this Rolodex. Wow. And I had to document every single connected phone call. And I started doing that. And they said, if you get somebody on the phone that's interested, raise your hand. Somebody will come over and take the call. Okay. Am I hired? I don't know. Am I making any money? I don't know. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I did it. And it must have been good because they kept calling me back the next day. And Friday, at the end of the week, after this same exact routine, they said, okay, you're hired. You're going to be making about $135 draw. I didn't even know what a draw was. Am I going to draw funny pictures on it? I had no idea what it was.
I get it.
And the next thing I know, I was working for a personnel agency. That's how I started in recruiting in 1981. I couldn't work at that company that long because I literally could not have a healthy lifestyle, breathing everybody's smoke, and ended up with bronchitis and then eventually bronchial pneumonia. And I said, that's it, I'm done here. So I got into more air conditioning related offices after a while and did really well. And then transitioned into the IT recruiting world in 1990.
That's so funny.
Yep.
I thought for sure you were going to say, I love the job. After 2 weeks, I was up to 2 packs a day.
I probably should have.
Right? Like,
I was.
No, I'm saying, like, without even smoking. Right?
Exactly.
Like, everywhere we used to go, the bars, the bowling alleys,
everywhere.
Airplanes.
Restaurants,
right?
Yeah.
And no one will ever know the pain we went through.
Right.
Folks. But, Dean, you made it through. I'm sorry about that spot on your lung. But so what are some of the fun? What did you really enjoy about recruiting? I know you were a people person, so give me a little bit more.
So
what really
I love the matching part, right? If a company would either call or I would call them about somebody and they say, we're looking for a specific individual with a specific skill set or, specific years of experience, whatever it was, I listened to what they were looking for and I would document everything. And then I try to find as close to what they're looking for as possible, adding the human element to it. So I would interview people. I would get a sense of what they were interested in, what they're not interested in, and then try to match that to my client's culture and what they're interested in, what they're not interested in. I was very good at that from a very early stage at the matching part of that.
Right.
And I parlayed that into growing a relationship with clients and also with candidates that would refer me to other people.
Yeah. People helping people, right? And since the day I met you, you cared about me and what I was doing, and I'm sure you've done that for everybody you've ever met. You're a very caring guy, and that's the kind of role you should be in, right? Helping people get what they want from life, as we talked about earlier. So what are some of the funniest memories? You have a funny memory or that something that happened at the recruiting firm besides the cigarettes?
There's several of them. Several I can't share, but one in particular, HR, exactly. One of the funniest things when I was working for an organization, the first one in IT recruiting in Secaucus, we were all like a family, and because you're a family, you can kind of sabotage each other's desks or phones, and they get the boot black or something on their ear, so they're going around, they don't realize it. So things like that. There was one time where I got somebody and they got me back a week later. There was this woman that was paced back and forth, and she would sit down and plop down in the chair as hard as she could. So I said, one day I'm going to get her. She was, again, all in good fun. I unscrewed the bottoms of the chair, so when she sat down, she went flying. Ooh. And, she came back, got me back about a week later, and she came in with a cast on her arm. And I went, what happened? She said, I fell on my chair and I broke my arm. And I felt so horrible about it. So then she goes, and then she said, rip the cast off, threw it away. I said, gotcha, sucker.
That's great.
No, I
great.
gave her a high five on that one. That was awesome.
And being that you don't want to sound like you're ancient, could you please fill us in what boot black was? No.
Kiwi black. Kiwi black shoe polish.
Oh, that explains it. Everybody remembers kiwi shoe polish, dude. Kiwi. Oh my God! Remember you had to shine your shoes. Remember that?
Yep.
Wow. So that's a great memory. That lady was funnier than you, but
I agree.
all right. So you told me you took a sabbatical from the staffing business.
Yep.
Did it help, and why did you do it?
Very much so. I decided to take a sabbatical probably about 14, 15 years ago. I didn't see the value that I had been bringing for many years previous to that. The market was soft. Companies weren't hiring recruiters, and if they did, they gave them not the best jobs to work on. It was like a needle in the haystack. And I said, I'm tired of this. And I decided to go back to, I didn't mention I was in the computer training business, not doing the training, but working for a company that did the training. So I said, I'm going to call. My dad had passed away, and I didn't want my mom to be by herself. So I wanted to be closer to home. So I ended up contacting a company that was based in not far from where I live in Morris County. And I didn't have any positions to look at. They didn't have any positions listed, but I reached out to the CEO of that company. The guy's name was Mike Landau. You may have heard of him. And I connected with him on LinkedIn, called him. I'm sorry, I sent a note to him a couple of days later. Thank you for connecting with me. Called him a day or two after that, and I said, Mike, I've looked at your company's website. I like your business model. I believe I can add value to you. I'd love to buy you lunch one day and to discuss it. And he said, well, I'm not really hiring right now, but sure, come on over. Can you come over tomorrow? So I came over the next day, met with him, what was supposed to be a half-hour exploratory meeting. It turned out to be a 2.5-hour marathon. And he had a position or a role in mind that he wanted to fill seats in a second office, which was used as a training center. And he brought me in for that. So he said, I want you to think about it, and I want you to get back to me over the next couple of days. Well, I thought about it on the way home, and I said, I want to do this. I know it's not going to be what I'm accustomed to earning, but it's something that I'm interested in doing to get my head together. And before I even got home, I had a voicemail, I had an email, and I think a text message from him that he was really serious about it and wanted me to come back in the next day. So came back in the next day, made me an offer. Didn't even give me a number. He said, I'm really interested. Are you interested? I said, I'm very interested. He goes, great. We shook hands. So I knew the role. I knew everything other than the compensation. So he goes, oh, I guess I should give that to you. Let me figure it out. I'll go back to you. So we worked out something, and I ended up working there. And there was an interesting person that I met along the way that was looking to take the business out of his home into an office. And that man was called Tommy Hilcken.
Yeah. Thank God for Mike Landau. We're sitting here together all these years later because of Mike.
Exactly.
Good man, and I got to meet you, and I'm glad that happened. God
Me
works
too.
in strange ways.
Yep.
So how did you get back into the career that you thoroughly enjoyed? What brought you back into it? Were you drawn back into it, or did you fall back into it? Fill me in.
That's a great question. There was a gentleman that I've known for quite some time previous to that. And I was working in Parsippany. He was working in Parsippany. And he said, Dean, I see you're in the neighborhood again. I haven't seen you in a long time. Why don't you get together? We'll have lunch. Come in the office. It's on me. Free lunch. I'm going. So met with him. We were in the conference room of the business, and told me a little bit about what he was doing. And next thing I know, I hear a knock at the door. And here's this gentleman coming in with a book and a pen and paper. And he sits down, and he gets introduced. It was the CEO of the company. And it turns out that his partner had passed away. It was a search firm. I didn't know it was a search firm. But his partner had passed away suddenly about 6 months earlier. And they were looking for somebody, not to replace him, but to replace the role that he was in. And they were interested in me. It was a total setup. And he was interviewing me. And I said, I'm really not interested in the staffing business anymore, but tell me what you're looking for. I know enough people I can refer to you. So he didn't hear I wasn't interested. He invited me out for drinks and to talk about stories. So I said, fine, I can have some fun. So go out, and a couple of months later, and we're having dinner, we're having drinks, and At the end of it, we're laughing, we're having a great time. He goes out to the men's room, and the bill came, so I took the bill, and he goes, when he comes back, he goes, "Where's the bill?" I said, "I got it. Don't worry about it. You get the next one." He goes, "Nobody's done that in 20 years. I'm usually the one signing off on things." So he says, "I want you to come into the office Friday if you can make the time." I'm like, "I'm not interested." But he was either has selective listening, tone deaf, or he just was really intent of getting me back into the business. And he eventually wore me down, and I decided to join him and be part of that team. And that's how I got back into the business.
No, it sounds great. When we go to lunch later, remember who picks up the tip.
Anytime.
Yeah, weighs a lot, doesn't it?
McDonald's isn't bad.
There you go. So now you transitioned. Here we are, whole new world, right? Going out, pretty much as we call it, self-employed, or maybe you're a entrepreneur of some sort. But now you're an independent career coach. So tell us a little bit, how did it come about? And more importantly, how can you as a career coach help others?
Well, that's a great point. That's the most important thing to me. It's not just the coaching part of it; it's how I can help others.
Right.
That was the main reason I did that. So working for that individual for 5.5 years, I loved it. It was great. I made him money, made me money, but more importantly, continued the brand of the company that he brought me in for. And it was terrific, and I was very content to have my 4-mile commute, total autonomy, and that was the role I was going to ride into the sunset with when I decided to hang it up. But then I get a phone call from a guy out of the blue. By the way, his name is Dean, and I had tried to recruit him years earlier. He was a baseball coach. I was a baseball coach. He was a scout leader. I was a scout leader. We shared the first name. We had a lot in common. And just a super guy. He goes, I'm working for this company right now that's an IT advisory firm based in the Midwest that's looking to grow in the Northeast. We would love to partner with a local search firm, and I couldn't think of anybody else other than you to work with. So I said, great, come down, let's talk about it. I'm thinking new client. So we talked. I thought it was a very interesting conversation, very interesting company. They did a lot of cool things. They took care of their employees. Very, very different mindset than companies that I had been working with. So I signed them up as a client. I put a fee agreement together. They work with me, and one of the positions that they were looking to fill was a internal talent acquisition person based in the New York area. So I said, well, I certainly know enough people there in that field. Let's see who I can narrow it down to 3 or 4. Got it down to 4. Everybody interviewed. Not one person got the offer. And I, to this day, was shocked about that. I was like, what did I miss? Usually 3 out, somebody's getting an offer. But I must have missed something. So Dean, referred me to somebody in the Midwest office, in the Minnesota office, that had a more mature recruiting staff. I think he had about 5 or 6 recruiters at that point he was responsible for. So I talked to him, and he explained more in depth about the culture of the company and the training opportunities and the growth opportunities. And the more I heard, the more I said, this is a really old school company. I didn't know companies like this existed anymore. So I'm literally walking my dog up the block from where I live. I live in a dead-end street. And it was almost like I got a Field of Dreams moment where you hear, if you build it, they will come. I had somebody tapping me on the shoulder thinking, hey, dummy, they're looking for you. I literally had that. I can hear it in my ears. And I said it was so overwhelming that I turned around. Sorry, dog. We're going back home. And I was doing my mental pros and cons on the way back to the house. And before I walked in the front door, I knew that if I didn't put my name in the hat for this, and I didn't at least give it a shot, I would be kicking myself the rest of my life. But then I thought, the self-doubt creeps in. I was 60 at that point. And I said, nobody's going to want to hire somebody my age. They're going to want to hire somebody half my age. But you know what? I got to give this a shot. So I gave him a call when I got back, and I said, I'm interested. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I found your recruiter. He goes, fantastic. Who? Me. He goes, no way. Get your resume to me. Let's get you in here as soon as possible. So 3 weeks later, had an offer in my hand. I gladly accepted it on one condition. We had a fee agreement in place with the company. If I were to accept the position, my company had to get a fee. And who I told that to, they said, that's the right thing to do, of course. So I said, then I accept. So I was my last placement in my last company.
No, wow.
That's crazy, right? I tell that story to people and they can't believe it. I've never heard that before. But I got to say, making that decision was the best decision. Actually, the last two were the best two places I've ever worked in my entire career.
Oh, that's awesome. So when you think about it going forward, right, career coach, how do you help people? What are some of the services you provide? You know, like we talked about the toolbox, what kind of tools are you bringing to help people?
Great question. I labored long and hard about this because there are coaches out there that have all the certifications and years of experience and all of these things. And I know quite a few, and I know you do as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I labored on this, and I said, what do people need out there? And right at that time, I had been laid off as the talent acquisition only talent acquisition person in the Northeast for that company I worked at. And then everybody got laid off. All 30 recruiters got laid off in stages because they ended up selling the company last year. So it's like, what do I want to do? Well, there's a lot of people that, not just recruiters, but there's a lot of non-billable folks that were laid off as well. Let me see if I can help them. These are people that working with the company for 10, 15, 20 some odd years and even longer that don't know the rules of today's job searching situations. It's changed in the last year, let alone 20 years. So I said, let me see if I can help these folks. And I did. And several of the people said, you know what? You gave me some valuable information here. You should go into your own coaching business. So the seed was planted by them. And the more I heard, and my wife too on the other side, you should do this. You should get paid for doing what you're doing. So the more I thought about it, the more I said, all right, if I do this, what services would I provide? Resume, helping people with resumes. I could not believe how many people send me their resumes, and I wouldn't bring them in for an interview with a resume that was 10 pages long or 8 pages long with margins all over the place and typos. So I said, I have to help people with their resumes. Also, their LinkedIn profiles. There's a lot of people that don't have a powerful looking LinkedIn profile because let's face it, everybody looks at your LinkedIn profile. So it starts with the picture and then your experience. So get a professional headshot out there. So I don't do that, but I recommend people do. So I help them with that. I help them with career coaching, career strategies. How do you get from point A to point B? Interviewing skills, how to be a more effective interviewee. We even do some mock role playing, which people enjoy. Even if they don't, if I don't recommend them to a position, they go on their own, they find something, I'll help them. And I'll do a mock interview with them and go through the good guy, bad guy with them. Very beneficial. I also do job search strategy. I teach them and I work with them. It's a partnership. It's not just, this is the Dean Hoffman way of doing it. It's a partnership. I interview them as if I was interviewing them for my company. And I would want to get to know what their hot buttons are, what they're interested in, what they're not interested in, what they're excited about, what they're not excited about, and try to find the right companies that would fit what they're looking for. Mm-hmm. And then the last thing is actually introducing them to people in my network. And after I help them with their resume, after I help them with a LinkedIn profile, after they've identified certain companies, I look to see who I'm connected to at senior levels, and then I reach out to those companies on their behalf without charging the company a fee. That's very nice situation for companies to be in. So I think I'm up to 7 people now that I've gotten jobs for.
Ah, fantastic. Very fulfilling.
Very.
You know, I look at it and I'm thinking about what you're saying, what you do, and it's so important. You're helping people who are kind of stuck and how to present themselves in a professional manner, right? The front end, like you were just mentioning, LinkedIn and getting that headshot done and, you know, getting everything to look professional, clean, right to the point where somebody's, the first impression, right? It's, you can't, you know, can never repeat and get a first impression ever again.
That's right.
So in all you've done in your life, your career, your business, what about just you, Dean? What are you most proud of as Dean Hoffman? Business person, father, husband.
Well, the three things that I'm most proud of is my wife, who has put up with me for half of my life, half of my life being single, half of my life being married to my first wife. She is awesome, and I'm absolutely the proudest of her and what she's done, and also what we've been able to accomplish together. We have 2 kids now. One just turned 32 and one just turned 29, so they're not kids anymore, but they'll always be our little kids. And our daughter, the oldest, is now a mother of 4, so we have 4 grandkids. And a couple of grand horses and a couple of grand dogs, and I could go down the list. Chickens now, but the proudest I am is definitely my wife and 2 kids and 4 grandchildren. But I guess from a professional standpoint, I'm proudest of when people actually listen to the advice that you give to them, and then they come back to you and they say, I couldn't have done it without your advice, what you've given to me. And thank you so much for doing that. That, to me, makes it all worthwhile. And I know you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's difficult because I hear you. It's great to be proud of the moments, the things you've done without being full of pride, and like, just understanding what you're doing is for others takes away the ego of the whole thing, right? And that's the beauty of what you do. I know for sure you might get compensated for what you do, but the greatest compensation you get is that person who says, I just landed a job. There's nothing more fulfilling than that.
Nothing.
For me, like I said, the smiles, the laughter carries me. Someone saying, Dean, man, oh man, I just landed a job.
Mm-hmm.
There's your pay.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah, in God's world, that's your pay.
Yep.
So, this will be great. I'd like to know this myself because we talk a lot about concerts, baseball, family, all the good stuff. So, what would you like to be remembered for? Your numbers being good?
My PSA.
That's the worst thing.
Yes.
Hey, my numbers are good.
I think that the thing I'd like to be most remembered for is that he was a decent guy. He was honest. He gave back and helped people's lives be a little bit better because of things he did or said, or maybe made them laugh, or maybe roll their eyes because it was another corny joke. But it was all part of, you know what? People are looking at us. And you don't realize that because we're so busy doing us.
Mm-hmm.
But people are watching us, and I don't like when I'm up on a pedestal someplace and people are, neon lights and that type of thing. I'd rather be the guy behind the scenes, not in front. So this is a little unnatural today, but I would love people to say, Dean was a good guy. He was an honest guy, and I'd like to be like him. I don't want to be him, but I'd like to be like him. I learned that from a dear friend of mine who sadly passed away at 47, way too young. And I watched him, this big financial corporate guy, rolling around on the floor with his kids and just wrestling with them and just goofing around with them, being a goofy guy that people in the corporate world never saw. But I watched that and I took notes. So when I put the grandkids, or even my kids early on, I don't know if I can do it anymore, put them on my shoulder and did the vroom vrooms around the room, I learned that from him. And, I'd like to see that others have kind of taken note of that, and maybe they're doing that with their kids. Little things like that. Not one big thing, but a number of little things, or even one little thing that you've made somebody's life better because of what you've said, did, acted like, whatever it may be.
Fantastic. And in closing, I'd like to say, Dean Hoffman, you are a good guy, and my life is better knowing you.
Ditto, sir.
You got it, man.
Appreciate
That's it. You got it.